Hello, this is Joe Mendiola. Doing chapter 2 theory. This is just a test to see if this is what he wants, and Leo, hope you message him or no, message us on WhatsApp as soon as possible. Alright, continuing with the example. This is chapter 1.1 introduction because I feel like there should be a little bit of an introduction, and this is my example. Is that basically this whole book is focusing on the ontological, epistemological, and methodological underpinnings, asking questions like what is public admin, what can we know about public admin, and how should our efforts in public admin be executed, respectively. Now we'll go in chapter 2, chapter 2 theory. Chapter focuses on question raising and redescriptions of concepts that go off and act on them. And narrative reasoning, generalized deductions, and theory practice gap. The theory practice gap. All right, now we're 2.1 theory as hypothesis producing nomothetic generalization. Remember that this is just my rough draft. I don't even have my notes correctly. It's in a scientific sense, theory is described as a coherent narrative capable of explaining and maybe predicting future world events. 2.1.1 a coherent account of the facts. A theory is for accounting of the facts. The attempt of a theory is to get a generalization. Say the sun goes off and there's a sunset, or there's a sunrise and a sunset, and they go off and have that phenomena, and try and find a way to get that generalization and turn it into a description of which you can go off and test. The example is a Copernicus theory, which it reinterprets the fact. It doesn't change the fact. Because Copernicus' theory is that the Earth revolves around an axis around the sun. Next. 2.12 theory, data versus data and theory. The whole thing of this is that the difference between an empiricist and a rationalist. An empiricist values their sensory data, or sensory images, or sensory inputs that go off and create experience and ideas. And a rationalist is one who's relying on a concept to act on sensory inputs. And basically the summary of this whole thing, of this whole paragraphs, is that both of them need the other to go off and survive. So an empiricist needs the concept to understand the sensory input they receive, and a rationalist needs sensory inputs to create an understanding or a need of a concept such as healthcare. You can't go off and immediately make a concept of healthcare if you don't even know what health is, like medication. Next one, theory as a narrative. The issue with so basically the whole idea of this part of the chapter is that methodology of public admin or social science is that a researcher has to be in the research and cannot be objective in a study, or tries to be as objective as possible, even though it can be subjective. So when making qualitative research, the person must remember about human fallibility. Next one, 2.2.1 the quest of reason. I think it's quest for reason, but we'll change that if that's wrong. The whole idea of this is that logic and reason in empirical testings are always up to critique, and the storyteller approach to things helps us make a theory stand up to it. So basically, it's like one states, the book says one state the research problem. 2, review the relevant literature. 3, discuss the procedures of method and methods to create a fair test of the hypothesis. 4, report the findings. And 5, announce the conclusions, implications, and limitations of your research. Now the 2.2.2 metaphors. In order for people to identify and act on a theory, we need a metaphor or a storytelling example, which is basically a metaphor of how to act on a theory. 2.3, theory and practice. The assessment of gaining knowledge, such as an academy or an execution of real-world practices, or assessing the knowledge gained from the academy versus the execution in real-world practice. Theory is something to apply to practice. Theory as something to apply to practice. The book makes 2 good examples that made me really interested. It talks about single loop learning, in which a person wants to learn about things to improve their current practices of how to act on things, and double loop learning, which is aimed at looking at the practice itself or the process or whatever you do to go off and achieve your goal and see if there's an issue and see if there's a more efficient way to do it or a solution if your actions right now are inefficient. Theory practice gap. 2.3.2, the theory practice gap. It's the real thing between a person that's thinking about helping a person and the person that's already doing the practice or whatever, or practitioner, is that practitioner, especially when it has like 21 years or 24 years, as the book talks about, I think it's 24 years, that being doing the process, people are doing a single practice or process, people are hesitant to go off and reflect on it and see if there's a new way to do things more efficiently. And that's basically the theory practice gap. All right, goodbye. The end. Good night.